Hello there guys, it's Joey. So this is a much belated video. This is a new Healing Witch video that I felt the need to make, and this is about not apologising for your emotional states, as well as celebrating and talking a little bit about the recent couple of ladies who've come forward and talked about matters and causes in a communal sense that matter to them and cause an emotional response in them. And it raised some interesting points with regards to how we view people and their emotional states, and then kind of like the almost fear to have certain emotional states within the spiritual community and so on and so forth. And looking at that and looking at why it is that emotional responses in both males and females is sometimes really judged and discouraged in spiritual circles. So there hasn't been a Healing Witch video for a while, and the reason for that is because, in my opinion, there is a time to talk about healing and shadow work, and they're all very much of a oneness to me. It's spiritual work, basically. There's a time to discuss it, raise points, muse over things, discuss how we feel about certain things that have come to our attention. And that's kind of, for me, a little bit, the making the video is kind of like the acknowledgement process. And it's saying, you know, I'm aware of these things within myself, and I wanted to talk about them within a community sense too. And that was some of the Healing Witch videos. And then there was a time to do the work. And that's a highly private, personal process, which isn't going to benefit anybody or me to really discuss in depth, because I think we all deal with certain emotional situations, spiritual situations differently, and you know, some things are hard, and it can be a struggle. It does raise an interesting thought though, that even upon saying it, I realise that it's interesting to me that the struggle with spiritual backup, if you like, the emotional difficulties and things, is something that we feel we need to do privately and not really highlight that we've been doing. So I'm kind of trying to counterbalance that practice by saying, you know, that the reason for the pause, the silence, since the last Healing Witch video, is very much about doing the work and being spiritually present with key issues that needed to be addressed, looked at, gone over and journaled about, felt, cried about, screamed about, all those emotional responses to, until the healing process took part, and moving on from things that were blocking me and taking action in those areas for healing. And recently, the two very brave ladies in the community have spoken up to community issues that matter to them on an emotional level. And Molly from Her Speak was first with her video on Facebook, and she was outspoken. And then there was Kelly Ann's video about spiritual bypassing. And all of these recent videos have been addressing things which people don't really want to discuss, because it's not the softer side, I guess, of spirituality, because it can be difficult, because we can all be held responsible in some form for our own misgivings, our own judgments, our own behaviours, when we've not been as fully engaging perhaps as we should. And when, you know, sometimes even I have felt, you know, that the resistance to perhaps making too many videos of a political nature. And I'm not one to back away from expressing something on a very emotional stage when I feel that I need to, for one reason or another. It can be a video that I make because I need that video to be made for me, as well as for other people who are probably feeling the same way. But it can be a bit of an emotional and spiritual release to say, you know, I'm human, this is going on, I'm very upset about a certain situation. But I also receive backlash, and have received backlash, for emotionally putting myself out there in certain ways, and receiving unpleasant messages and how dare I be emotional in response to X, Y, and Z, and it's stupid and this, that, and the other. And this was actually highlighted with both the ladies who came forward in a very brave fashion and said, I have this platform and I really believe in standing side by brothers and sisters who are being discriminated against. There are different matters of hatred going on because, there's been matters of racism, there's been matters of homophobia, and really it's the hate that needs addressing, and how we are sort of bypassing a little bit on how we don't stand up for when we should. And I felt that to a certain degree within myself, admittedly, because I made a video in support of LGBT. I've made more than one, but with the shooting, which truly horrified me, I was in tears about it. I made a video because I felt that, and I had my little altar set up because it was something, a very, very small something that I could do to show support for the LGBT community. And that video, on purpose, was non-monetized, so it wasn't anything to do with me. It was just completely about support. And I didn't hesitate for a second. The minute I found out, I was like, I need to put something out there and say, I stand with LGBT, and I've done that in the past with the Morrigan videos and discussing how some people have brought like the kind of hatred to that LGBT community within within Morrigan worship, and how I totally disagree with that. And then I talked a little bit about xenophobia and things with regards to the Brexit videos, and there's 2 of them. And I had to make the second video because I was saying, I'm not going to apologise for having an emotional response and feeling this way as I did to the Brexit, but then I got a whole load of crap and backlash because I brought forth my emotional states in how I felt in the xenophobia and things, and it was unappreciated in some people's eyes. And then it kind of got to the point where then there was more uproar and more racist attacks in America in particular. And I got to and I was thinking, I don't want to keep making videos in case I cheapen my support and what I'm saying. And that's something that passed through my head, admittedly, that I was like, I want to stand by these people, and I was like, I'll go and use different platforms and use different platforms and share different things on different platforms, and that can hopefully address that I want to support people and I want to support Black Lives Matter and so on and so forth. But I don't want to, every time there's some, I feel like if I was doing it every single time, I'd be just jumping on a bandwagon and it would come off as disingenuous. And I do feel for the people that have been victimized. I truly do, and I don't want it to come off as disingenuous. And then you're starting to wonder where that nonsense thought comes from, that if you show too much support to too many people, then rather than being, humanitarian, then you become fake. And it's a weird thought process when you really sit down and think about it. And I think the problem lies in the thing that I really wanted to talk about in this Healing Witch video, which is the fact that in a lot of spiritual communities, including ours, we're often taught to be apologetic or to hide our emotional states, unless they are happy, happy, la la. And the ladies who put themselves out there both acknowledged that, they're usually very upbeat, positive, encouraging, supportive influencers in their videos, and particularly Molly, who's incredibly bubbly and upbeat, and to have such a serious, potent video from her was A, brave, and B, you could tell the depth of emotion that she was feeling, and it was so against what was perhaps usual for her video style that it would rub people up the wrong way, and she was aware of it, that people weren't going to be happy just because it wasn't a ultra bubble squeak popular happy video. And it's interesting, isn't it, that the minute we are standing for something, there is an element of sometimes people emotionally react to it in a bad way. Like, if you have an emotional response that isn't grins and giggles, there's something not acceptable about it. And I was thinking of this in like a personal healing, more singular focused perspective as well. When I very first thought about making this video, and that was some time ago, and I put it off because I didn't feel the time was right. And clearly the time is right for it now. And the thing that really irritated me at that time, and I've seen it again since, is this concept that bravery and strength come from emotionally crying your eyes out in a box at night, like in your own room or whatever, and then the world doesn't know what's going on with you the next day, that you have a brave front on, you have a smile on your face, and brave is the woman that cries behind closed doors, but no one knows what bothers her on a day-to-day basis. And this translates for a lot of men as well, because a lot of men are given the perception that they're not allowed to be emotional, they're not allowed to cry, and it's weakness. And I think it's kind of interesting how the genders balance out, because it's that for guys, and then for women it's like women are so emotional, so the minute you show any emotion in public it's, oh well, she's an emotional woman. Time of the month. So funny, because you know, a woman can't have an emotional response to something unless she's on her period. Grats. That means congratulations, sorry, that's gamer speak. It just irritates me, and I really, really dislike this idea that emotions are a source of weakness and you should hide them, and they should be in the back room when you're crying and nobody can see, so it's fine to be emotional there, but in the world it's frowned upon, judged. You should be a happy little camper, just keep on going. No, it's nonsense. Now, I'm not saying that one should be in an emotional state of turbulence all the time in public, because it becomes disingenuous, I guess. I think that, you know, when you feel something strongly and you emote about a situation and it comes from a place of truth, then you should absolutely fully on embrace that. And if something really makes you angry, or something really makes you sad and makes you cry, or something makes you elated and happy, then it should be expressed, because it's not healthy to bottle up emotions until you have to rewind. Yeah, so until you bottle up emotions, and they just come flooding out in weird ways, and they do. It's really unhealthy. I think it's not even a scrap of surprise to anybody that, you know, bottling up emotions is unhealthy in this day and age. It's probably, you know, and people are like, oh well, save it for your shrink, and it's like, what? Have we as a human society become so disengaged from the ideal of what, you know, emotional responses are, and allowing people their emotional responses to situations, that we then sort of say, well, they have to pay somebody to care about their emotional state. So, and in spiritual communities, this is even worse, I think. I think this is even worse than in society in general. And I live in England, where the whole stiff upper lip crap still perpetuates like English culture. Like, oh well, the English don't show their emotions. Really, 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 just because you're English. I mean, I'm not technically fully English anyway, so I have that kind of get out of jail free card, I guess, if I really needed to do that, which is kind of sad, really, isn't it? Because, you know, having to culturally sidestep a cultural stereotype, that's great on the basis of emotions. Not good. And so, in spiritual communities, there is this sense that if you're not Zen all the time, you're not spiritual. And it's just, I understand there are particular lines of spiritual thought that disassociate themselves from emotional states, and, you know, reaching the Zen and the the place of calm and inner tranquility, and then, you know, and then there's the kind of spiritual bashing. If you react to any situation, if you react, you've given up your power. You are not allowed to react. You are not allowed to have an emotional response. You must be a rock. You must be a stone. And again, it's like, well, this is so cut and dry. It's not even funny. It's not allowing people to have emotional response. And it's like, well, if somebody has been pretty, you know, unpleasant, then why shouldn't you have an emotional response? Why shouldn't you be upset or angry about a certain given situation? And really, as a witch, and we talk about the fact that we invest our emotions into our spell work and our magic, how important that is, then denying the emotional states becomes really a confusing spiritual message as far as I'm concerned within pagan circles. And there does tend to be a heavy borrowing from perhaps the more Eastern-based religions which have more of that element to them, and that kind of gets brought into New Age spirituality. And it's a weird disconnect because of the bringing that in practice into a pagan witch earth-based spirituality is a little bit confusing, because then, you know, your earth-based spirituality, you've got your fingers in the dirt, you've got your emotions. The easiest way I think I can really sort of draw parallels with this is from the idea of negative magic, that if you really truly are cursing, hexing, or whatever, and I'm not even getting into that subject, I'm just using this as an example, then you have to be angry, you have to be pissed, you have to be so disgusted that you can feel it in your veins, you can feel the fire going, or depending on how you get angry, because when I get really, really angry, I get very, very, very still. So if I get very, very, very still and very, very cold, then I'm more dangerous than if I'm shouting or ranting or whatever. And if I get into that emotional state and then unleash some magic, that's going to be some nasty magic. And that's a taught process of spellcasting that you have to want, you have to need, you have to desire. And all of these emotions have to be paramount importance at the forefront of your mind. You have to believe in it so strongly that the universe has no choice but to agree with you. And it's an emotional state that you have to reach of pure belief, and it's almost bordering on a kind of crazy. I talked about this in the, was it the Aqua or a Quartz video, where we talked about personal alchemy and how you believe in something almost to the point of insanity. And I love that quote about witchcraft, and you know, you have to almost border on the crazy, and how, you know, how the creative line is like a hop. This is my paraphrasing, but it, you know, there's a crazy and creative, and you kind of hop between the two, and that is like the true mind of the creative and creatrix, if you like. And that's how spell work can get made quite well. That's how I engage with spell work. The creative process is this creation of energy and focus and magic and intention, and it's fueled by emotional states. So the idea to me in witch or pagan circles that, you know, you should go behind closed doors and cry your eyes out and, you know, fight battles no one knows anything about, and then in public you're fine, you're la-di-da, it's great, everything's wondrous, is weird to me. And I know it's not popular. I know that the popular presentation of spirituality on any channel, but I guess YouTube is the one I'm more aware of, is the one where you're presenting yourself as perma-bubbly. And I have trouble with this because I'm not perma-bubbly. I'm stupid and daft on occasion, and will do funny voices and stuff if the mood takes me, which is just part of who I am, weird basically. But I'm not like bubbly upbeat, like up there somewhere, you know, and I'm more grounded, I guess. And that's just who I am, she says. I told you I was going to be moving about. And And it's weird to me to see this dynamic. I must have said weird to me so many times in this video, because it's just strange. That the emotional states of the people that we are listening to are so judged and so badly treated when they have a negative experience, and when people are upset, or when people are crying, or when people are angry, it's kind of dismissed almost. It's kind of treated like it's not real, or it's not like that how they should be presenting themselves, as if they've somehow lost control of themselves. And it really is that the emotional states within oneself are somehow treated as something to be ushered out the way, and something that people don't want to see. And it's just like, that's sometimes the most life-changing things we can sit and watch are really emotional and cause an emotional response in us. And spirituality for me, and the witchcraft path, is about influencing and affecting change within my own life. And how can we do that without influencing and affecting our emotional states, or harnessing the power in our emotional states and using that as a drive for change? Our emotional states mean that we change things in our lives. That's the process of magic I've already talked about. The concept, that is a big eagle or something. Wow, that was huge. There's the quote for the day in the video that someone will take out of context. It was huge. Anyway, told you, there you go, daftness in my videos. So we talked about, emotions being fuel for change in terms of magic. So the emotional states are this building up, release, and that's magic in simplistic forms. Terminology, in simplistic terminology. Well, emotional states are also change within our own lives, and they're also fuel for change in, the world. Because if an emotional state is affecting us so much in our life, then we have to sit up and take notice of what is causing the emotional state and deal with it. That's why I talked about, having the space to go and heal and look at the emotional things that were causing reactions, causing me to take note of those phrases or memes or pictures or images or symbolism. They were causing an effect in me, and seeing other people's videos, and if they caused an effect in me, looking at why that was and looking inward. And then there's the looking outward into the world, which is what we've discussed a little bit already with the two ladies that did such great, brave videos. Because the world out there needs men and women, witches, pagans, however denomination you want to label yourself. Basically, the world needs you. And the world needs you to stand up and say no to situations that are full of hate. Because the only way that hatred and bullying and victimization, real victimization on such a scale stops is when we stand up and say, you know what, this is not acceptable. This is not what it means to be pagan. This is not what it means to be a follower of the Morrigan. This is not what it means to be human. This is not what it means to be a woman. This is not what it means to be a spiritual being. This abuse of whatever it is wrong. And I stand up and stand against that. And for my part, it feels like very much a part of something that I need to do whenever the need comes into me. And I've done it on a number of occasions, shown quite a lot of emotion on video, and I will not stop showing quite a lot of emotion in video when the need arises for whatever reason. And I will not stop making LGBT videos in terms of supporting them. Now, am I LGBT? No, I'm not. I'm just a supporter. It's like, it doesn't matter what I am. It matters that the suffering and victimization of a certain group of individuals is so raw and needs people who are not involved to stand with them and say, hate is not acceptable. It's Maya Angelou. Hate has never solved one. Hate has caused a lot of problems in the world, but hasn't solved one yet. And having an emotional response to those big situations can be daunting, and I understand that people sometimes just, they feel overwhelmed because of the pure amount of difficulty there is in the world, and there is a lot of hate, and there is a lot of victimization, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of crime against people, and there's just so much, and it can get overwhelming. And there have been occasions where I didn't know how to handle the emotional response that certain things, include quite often politics, had on me, and Brexit was one, and I was just like, I just need to release it. I just need, because there's going to be other people who are feeling exactly the same way as I am. At the time, I had people thinking that suddenly I was a xenophobe because of the Brexit situation, and I was like, I have to address it. I have to address it for personal reasons. I have to address it to release that sadness, and I have to address it because it's making a point of standing up for my responses and my emotions in reaction to the world out there. And that's why I really wanted to talk about the fact that Molly and Kellyanne had both made these really brave videos. And it's interesting as well that I keep saying brave, because it shouldn't be brave to stand up and do the right thing. But it is, because there is this backlash, there is this judgmentalness, there is this unfriendliness, because people don't want to consider the difficult side of spirituality and magic and witchcraft. They don't want to face that sometimes things are going to suck. Things are going to make you cry, things are going to make you angry, things are going to make you jealous. And it's like all the ugly emotions, all the shadow emotions. And we give them these terms to put them in boxes as if, oh, well, for this month I'm going to do shadow work. I'm going to deal with the uglier parts of myself. And for me, whilst intensive shadow work can easily and does, and quite healthily, can be looked at and engaged with over a month, shadow work doesn't then go away. It's not like, oh, it's in this box for this month, and then it's dealt with, and then it's gone, and then I'm fine. It's part and parcel of who we are on a day-to-day basis. And the more we kind of demonize these aspects of ourselves, these emotions, the more damaging that is to our spiritual selves, because the spiritual experience for me isn't separate from the emotional self, and it's not separate from the physical self. I mean, you feel your emotions on a physical level, let's face it. You have responses of all kinds. I mean, just look at the emotional responses tied to sexuality. For normal individuals, I'm a survivor of abuse, and so I deal with all kinds of emotional responses to sexuality and sensuality, and that's part of dealing with my shadow on a daily basis. And that's okay. But some people will cringe at the very thought of it, because it's not tidy and neat, and I don't know. But it's perfectly okay to be emotive, both a male and a female. It's good. It's a good thing, and we should be encouraging it. I'm not saying, it's an excuse, because that's the other problem. The minute, you're talking about your emotions, it's like, well, some people will use it as an excuse to be nasty, or some people will say, well, if they have a right to their emotional responses, then they have a right to be racist, and they have a right to their hatred, and they have a right to their ignorant value judgments of whatever. And it gets so... it kind of gets, I don't know what it gets. It gets kind of... it kind of gets to the point where you have to really consider... It's an excuse if you're using your emotions to harm somebody, for your own value judgments, for your own reasons, for your own agendas. If you're thinking, I want to harm, I want to justify myself, justify this racist comment right here, or whatever it is, and you're using your emotional state to justify that, then it's really... I think it's kind of lying to yourself, to be honest with you, because there is an emotional response, but it's not the one that you're highlighting. There's a deeper emotional response. There's a fear response, most likely. A fear of things that they don't understand, a fear of things that are different. And fear is the ugliest, I think, of all emotions. Like, people go on about anger and whatever, but I think fear is actually the most damaging, because it fuels hate. Like, without fear, there is no hate. Because hatred comes of that which we refuse to understand, which we're afraid of, that is different, that is alien to us. And rather than, in a spiritual sense, realizing that emotions might actually be the joining thing, they might actually be the ties that bind us as humans, because we all, apart from very few extreme examples, we all have emotional responses. And just because our emotional responses aren't all uniform, which they shouldn't be, because let's face how awful would that be, doesn't mean that anybody's emotional states are correct or wrong. And really, we need to allow ourselves to be emotional beings, and we need to allow everybody else to be an emotional being, and we need to stop emotion shaming. Just stop it, basically. I think it's something that we need to heal as within ourselves, and thinking about how we respond to the emotional responses of other people, because it's important. Right, so I'm done for this particular video. I'm going to get all close in your face now because I need to press the button. Many blessings.